She will not announce it. There will be no warning shot, no declaration of intent, no obvious moment in which you can point and say, that is when it began. Instead, the slow dismantling of a man's spirit often begins in the subtlest corners of intimacy, under the guise of affection, concern, or compatibility. And when it is over, when you are hollowed out and struggling to recognize your own reflection, you will look back and wonder how you, the supposedly rational, self-possessed man, allowed such a thing to happen. Carl Jung understood this process not as mere interpersonal conflict, but as a deep psychic drama, an encounter between your conscious self and the unconscious forces personified by the feminine. And if you are blind to this, if you lack the symbolic literacy to read her actions for what they truly are, you will lose not just the relationship, but the sovereign core of your being. The Jungian thesis is brutal in its simplicity. A woman does not merely interact with the man in front of her. She interacts with the totality of his psyche, and her own unconscious responds to his unconscious before either of them have spoken a word. In this theater of shadow and anima, attraction is not about the pleasant surface of romance, but about the testing, breaking, and remolding of the man's psychic integrity. The danger is that you can pass every external test, have the status, the looks, the confidence, and still fail the internal one, because her influence reaches into the part of you that even you cannot see clearly. This is the cold promise. If you master the inner confrontation, if you can remain centered while her unconscious tugs, pulls, and seduces yours, she will not be able to break your spirit because you will no longer be fighting her. You will be in conscious dialogue with the forces she awakens in you. You will understand the real game being played, and in doing so, you will wield the one power Jung said is essential to human wholeness, the integration of the shadow. That is the battlefield we step onto now. Imagine the first scenario. You are several months into a relationship, the early intoxicating stage giving way to something more unpredictable. She begins to make small comments, not openly cruel, but sharp enough to register. You've been a little off lately. I just don't feel the same energy from you as before. She says it lightly, as if it is nothing, but in her eyes there is a glint of appraisal. The words are bait, though she may not consciously know it. From an evolutionary perspective, she is probing for signs of stability. At a deeper psychological level, she is unknowingly setting in motion a projection. She is inviting the parts of you that doubt your own worth to step forward into the light. This is the hidden test, the point at which she is not assessing your mood, but your very relationship to your own psyche. The weak response here is tragically common. The average man hears her remark and instantly shifts into damage control. He defends himself, offers justifications, promises to do better. He might even apologize for things that were never offenses. This is not a loving gesture. It is the collapse of the frame. By scrambling to soothe her, he validates her implicit suspicion that something is wrong with him. Psychologically, he has just signaled that her perception defines his reality. This is fatal because it tells her unconscious that he is a man whose center can be moved by emotional suggestion alone. Her attraction begins to fade, not because she is cruel, but because her psyche is wired to respond to strength, not emotional volatility. Every time he reacts in this way, her respect erodes another inch. The power response is radically different. When she makes the comment, the Jungian man does not rush to defend or repair. He absorbs the statement without internal collapse, as if her observation were a passing cloud in a vast sky. He may acknowledge it calmly, interesting that you feel that way, but he neither accepts nor rejects the premise. The subcommunication is profound. I am the arbiter of my inner state. Your perception is noted, but it does not dictate my truth. In Jung's terms, he is holding the tension between her projection and his reality without being forced into premature resolution. This is shadow work in real time, allowing the uncomfortable feeling to exist without fleeing from it. She is now in the presence of a man who will not be re-scripted by her unconscious tugs. The shift in her perception is immediate and primal. The unconscious part of her that was searching for a crack in his foundation now meets an unexpected solidity. She feels a mixture of frustration and fascination. Why does he not move when she pushes? Over time, this sensation becomes respect. Her attraction deepens not because he has convinced her of anything, but because he has demonstrated something rare, psychic sovereignty. The more she interacts with him, the more her own unconscious begins to mirror his steadiness, and the dynamic transforms. She is no longer seeking to break him, she is seeking to join him in the deeper space he occupies. This is not compliance. This is leadership in the realm of the psyche. The second scenario unfolds in a subtler arena social space. You are out together, perhaps at a dinner with friends or a work function, and in the midst of conversation, she lightly teases you in front of others. It is framed as humor, but the jab is aimed at something integral to your self-image, your competence, your ambitions, or your masculinity. The room laughs, the moment passes, and outwardly, it seems harmless. Yet beneath the surface, this is another unconscious test. Evolutionary psychology sees it as a calibration of your social dominance, how you handle public challenges without losing status. Jungian analysis reads it even deeper. Her unconscious has set a small fire to see whether your persona, the social mask you wear, will melt and reveal the shadow beneath. If you flinch, she will learn you cannot hold your masculine center when the social frame shifts against you. The weak response is to take the bait emotionally. The man laughs too loudly to mask discomfort, or he becomes defensive and insists on clarifying that her comment is untrue. In doing so, he broadcasts insecurity to everyone present, but more importantly, to her unconscious. His reaction confirms that her playful strike has landed where it hurts, revealing that his sense of self is fragile and dependent on external perception. In Jungian terms, his persona has just cracked, and instead of integrating the blow with humor and command, he scrambles to protect the mask. This marks him as socially brittle, a man whose authority evaporates when mildly challenged. Attraction does not die in that instant, but something in her withdraws. She now knows that his center can be destabilized under public scrutiny. The power response is to treat the moment as an opportunity to reassert frame dominance without hostility. When she makes the joke, the Jungian man receives it with a slow, knowing smile, not the smile of embarrassment, but the smile of someone who sees the move for what it is and remains unfazed. He may even turn the comment into a playful reversal, expanding the joke in a way that puts him at the helm of the interaction. For example, if she mocks his meticulousness, he might respond with mock gravitas. Of course. Excellence is a dangerous habit, highly contagious. The laughter now bends toward him because he has recentered himself as the origin of the social energy. Jung would call this the flexible strength of the individuated man, the ability to play with one's persona without being trapped by it. The subcommunication here is that he owns both the mask and what lies beneath it. The shift in her perception here is more electric than she may consciously admit. The initial test was a feeler, her unconscious probing, to see if he is the kind of man whose identity is externally governed. When he turns the moment into a display of wit, composure, and self-possession, her body registers something different: safety in his leadership and excitement in his unpredictability. He has not only survived the test, he has alchemized it into attraction fuel. Over time, these moments accumulate into a pattern. He is the man who cannot be embarrassed into submission, whose presence expands when challenged. She begins to trust that in the broader chaos of life, he will not crumble in the face of public adversity. This trust deepens desire, because it satisfies a primal imperative: to follow a man whose social and psychological frame remains unbroken, regardless of the arena. The third scenario arrives not in the public arena, but in the intimate quiet of private life, where there is no audience but the two of you. You are in your own space, her apartment or yours, and she suddenly withdraws emotionally. The warmth you are used to is replaced by a cool distance. Her replies to your words are shorter. Her gaze is evasive, her body language subtly closed off. She offers no explanation. For many men, this is one of the most destabilizing experiences in a relationship because it triggers deep attachment anxieties. Evolutionarily, such withdrawal is a potent signal. In ancestral environments, a mate's emotional retreat could prefigure abandonment. In Jungian terms, this is an activation of your anima, your inner feminine, whose moods and receptivity mirror your own unconscious state. Her withdrawal is not merely about her. It is a psychic mirror reflecting back the parts of you that fear losing connection, control, and certainty. The weak response is a predictable spiral into pursuit and overcompensation. The man leans in, asks repeatedly what is wrong, offers gifts or extra attention to fix the mood. He might even plead for reassurance. While this appears loving on the surface, it actually communicates dependency. His message, unspoken but deafening, is that his emotional stability depends entirely on her emotional openness. The moment she withdraws, his self-possession vanishes. Psychologically, he is surrendering the frame by placing her in the role of emotional regulator. This collapses attraction because, at a deep level, she cannot trust a man who must chase her moods to regain his balance. Jung would see this as a failure to integrate the anima. The man becomes possessed by it, reacting to her behavior as if it were the source of his wholeness. The power response is rooted in stillness and self-containment. When she withdraws, the Jungian man does not rush to breach the distance. He notices the change, but instead of collapsing inward, he gives space while remaining grounded in his own rhythm. He might shift his attention to his work, his craft, or even simple physical presence remaining in the room, but without emotional grasping. This is not passive aggression. It is the quiet assertion that his inner life does not vanish when her mood changes. In Jungian language, he is in dialogue with the anima rather than enslaved by it acknowledging her withdrawal, yet refusing to abandon his own center. The subcommunication is profound. He is available but not dependent, responsive but not reactive. The shift in her perception begins with curiosity. Her unconscious expected the familiar pattern, the man leaning in, scrambling to pull her back. Instead, she encounters an unexpected solidity, a refusal to dance to the tune of her withdrawal. This disrupts the dynamic in a way that commands attention. At first, she may even intensify her distance to test the boundary, but the lack of collapse on his part eventually transforms her emotional state. She begins to feel drawn back into connection, not because he demanded it, but because his steady presence created a safe gravitational pull. Over time, this establishes a deep respect. He is not afraid of her distance, and therefore he can be trusted to navigate the inevitable fluctuations of intimacy without losing himself. Her desire now links to a new certainty. This is a man who can stand unshaken in the changing weather of her moods. The fourth scenario takes shape in the crucible of ambition, those moments when your life's mission collides with her need for attention. You have a project, a business move, or a personal challenge demanding deep focus. You set aside time to work, to build, to advance. Yet just as you begin, she appears at the periphery with a subtle challenge, a request to do something together, a suggestion to take a break, or even a pout that you have been distant. On the surface, it seems innocent, but beneath it lies a primal test. Evolutionary psychology frames it as an instinctive check for resource allocation. How willing are you to divert time and energy away from the hunt to satisfy immediate relational needs? Jung would interpret it as an anima provocation, drawing you into the tension between the feminine pull toward connection and the masculine drive toward individuation. This is not about her consciously undermining your goals. It is the unconscious seeking proof of where your center truly lies. The weak response is to instantly abandon the work in order to please her. The man tells himself he is being considerate, but the psychological message is that his mission exists at her mercy. Over time, she will feel not gratitude, but a creeping loss of respect, because she will sense that he can be pulled off course by emotional cues alone. The masculine in him becomes subservient to the relational field, and she unconsciously concludes that his life is not driven by an inner compass. Jung would see this as a forfeiture of the self-allowing the core of one's being to be overridden by external influence. The result is a man who begins to resent her for interrupting, while she resents him for having no uncheckable path. The power response is to honor both the connection and the mission without letting either be eclipsed. When she tests in this way, the Jungian man receives it warmly, but maintains the sanctity of his purpose. He might take a moment to acknowledge her, perhaps even give a brief, attentive embrace, but then he returns to his work without apology. His sub-communication is crystalline. You are important, but my purpose is not negotiable. This balance is the essence of individuation, holding the masculine drive toward achievement and the feminine call to intimacy in a single, integrated frame. He demonstrates that his time is not a loose current to be redirected at will, but a disciplined river flowing toward a chosen destination. In Jung's terms, he is living in alignment with the archetype of the king, whose personal bonds exist within the broader service to a kingdom. The shift in her perception is complex, yet unmistakable. Initially, she may bristle at the boundary, feeling momentary rejection. But as the pattern repeats him returning to the mission after a brief, warm acknowledgement, her unconscious begins to translate this as strength rather than neglect. She recognizes that she is with a man whose life is anchored in something larger than her moods, and paradoxically, this deepens her attraction. He becomes not the man who can be summoned away from his path at a whim, but the man whose path she wants to walk beside. Her respect grows because she senses that his sovereignty is intact, and that he will not sacrifice the future on the altar of the moment. Over time, this transforms the relationship into one where his mission is not a competitor, but the very thing that magnetizes her to him. The fifth scenario emerges during conflict, the moment when emotions run high. Voices may rise, and the conversation edges toward the precipice of a fight. It could be over something trivial, like household chores, or something weighty, like loyalty or values. The content almost doesn't matter. What matters is that she delivers a line designed, consciously or not, to pierce you at the deepest level. She may bring up a past mistake, question your competence, or imply you are not the man you claim to be. This is the crucible where most men either detonate or retreat. Evolutionary psychology frames this as a fitness test under stress. Can you maintain composure and authority when threatened? Jung would interpret it as a direct confrontation with your shadow, the part of yourself you most want to keep hidden. In this moment, her unconscious is not simply trying to hurt you. It is attempting to see whether your identity can survive exposure to its own darkness. The weak response is pure reactivity. The man lashes out, meeting her words with equal or greater hostility. He may raise his voice, hurl insults, or storm out in a self-righteous rage. Alternatively, he collapses, shutting down, withdrawing, or apologizing excessively, just to end the discomfort. Both responses fail for the same reason. They hand her unconscious the evidence that his sense of self is brittle. If he attacks, it shows he cannot face criticism without needing to dominate or destroy. If he retreats into appeasement, it shows he cannot endure conflict without ceding power. In Jungian terms, he is either possessed by his shadow, letting it run unchecked, or completely disowned from it, letting it be manipulated from the outside. Either way, she sees a man who is not whole, and attraction begins to decay under the weight of distrust. The power response is to receive the blow without flinching or surrender. When she fires the sharp comment, the Jungian man takes a breath and allows the silence to hold for a moment. He looks at her with steady eyes, not as an act of intimidation, but as an act of grounding. His voice, when it comes, is calm and deliberate. He addresses the substance of her words without venom, and if there is truth in them, he acknowledges it plainly. If there is distortion, he names it without accusation. This is the art of owning one's shadow, neither defending it in shame nor weaponizing it in pride. The subcommunication is that nothing she says can destroy him, because he has already faced and integrated the parts of himself that others might use against him. He is not untouchable because he hides his flaws, but because he no longer fears them. The shift in her perception is often visceral. Her unconscious expected to destabilize him, to watch the crack appear. Instead, she sees a man who can absorb the full intensity of her challenge and still remain centered. This triggers a deep recalibration. If he cannot be broken here, in the intimate battlefield of the relationship, then he is likely unbreakable elsewhere. The respect this generates is not the shallow admiration given to charm or status. It is the reverence reserved for the rare man who is whole within himself. Over time, she stops using such barbed tests, not because she fears his reaction, but because her unconscious has accepted that his strength is real. In its place grows a steadier, deeper intimacy, one forged in the knowledge that his spirit does not fracture under pressure, but glows hotter in the forge.